Cody. Again, good evening, good morning, comrades, and welcome to our webinar entitled Resisting Western Military Hegemony, the Anti-Imperialist Struggle Against US-Led Military Bases. Before we begin, let me first introduce you to the series that we've been offering since June. This is the Land and Liberation series that's being initiated by the International League of People's Struggles, Commission 1, the Concern for National Liberation Against Imperialism and and Reaction, and Commission 6, the Peasant Commission. So this particular series that we're calling Land and Liberation addresses the escalating crises faced by peasant communities and rural sectors worldwide who suffer from imperialist land grabbing, displacement, militarization, environmental devastation, and corporate monopolization of food and agriculture. So through monthly and thematically focused discussions from July to December 2025, the series Land and Liberation seeks to deepen political understanding, sharpen collective analysis, and unify national liberation and peasant movements around the urgent demand for genuine agrarian reform, rural development, and resistance to imperialist exploitation. Each session grounds an anti-imperialist education with the lived realities of rural peoples, culminating in practical resources to strengthen organizing and solidarity. So building on this foundation, part 3 of the series, hosted as a webinar titled, which I've mentioned earlier, Resisting Western Military Hegemony, expands the focus to the critical role of militarism in US-led Western imperialist domination, bringing together voices from the Philippines, Puerto Rico, and the Sahel region. This event highlights popular struggles against US and Western military bases as strategic instruments of oppression that facilitate resource plunder, territorial control, economic and political oppression. It connects the urgent fight for land and liberation with the broader battle against militarism, underscoring how dismantling foreign military footholds is essential to liberating land, people, and nations. So this webinar also culminates the September weeks of action against US military bases, which have mobilized activists and organizations worldwide to expose and resist the sprawling network of US military installations that serve as instruments of imperialist domination. So these actions highlighted the devastating impacts of foreign bases, from environmental destruction, human rights abuses, to fueling wars of aggression and geopolitical repression. Amidst coordinated protests, educational events, and media campaigns, anti-imperialist activists for the whole month of September reaffirmed historic struggles that have successfully challenged and expelled US-led bases in different countries. So that's how our campaign has been coming along since around September 13. So the global wave of resistance is all the more inspiring given the complex moment we face. Imperialism is undeniably in decline, yet it reveals itself with ever more monstrous and desperate brutality. So, in this historic context, the courage and determination of those fighting on the front lines of these campaigns shine as beacons of hope and resistance. So if we have no more issues with sound, maybe we can watch the recap of the September weeks of action. Is that possible, Cody?
Unfortunately, there's an issue with the Zoom. We are not able to hear sound, but
Oh,
we put the link to the campaign webpage in the chat. So please, everyone, check out peoplestruggle.org/resist dash bases and our really wonderful recap video from the campaign showing actions from all over the world and statements of people is at the top of that page. So please check it out. Back to you,
yes.
Sarah.
Thank you, Cody. So these videos are actually available for your viewing on YouTube. So please help us in popularizing these videos. Share it with your on your social media platforms. Make it part of your educational discussions, and make sure that our children will watch and cherish our struggle. So we will now proceed with the presentation. So each of our speakers will address the key questions of how do US and Western military bases function as instruments of imperial domination? So that's the first broad question. The second is what resistance or what resistance actions have proven effective, and the third would be what strategies can advance our struggle, our collective struggle. Of course, our speakers will also be discussing the unique characteristics of their struggle against US led Western military bases. So we are very excited. So we'll proceed with the presentations. Our first speaker is a seasoned anti-imperialist activist and the current chairperson of Bayan Philippines, or Bagong Alyansang Makabayan, New Patriotic Alliance. His commitment to progressive causes is reflected in his 3 terms as congressman representing Bayan Muna party list in the Philippine Congress. Beyond legislative work, he has been deeply involved in grassroots movements, having worked with the Militant Labor Union Alliance Kilusang Mayo Uno or May 1 movement. His activism began in his youth as a student leader, where he also led the progressive journalist community through the College Editors Guild of the Philippines, shaping his lifelong dedication to social justice and national liberation. Everyone, please help me welcome Comrade Teddy Casino.
Thank you, Sarah, for that very nice introduction. And good morning, good evening to all of you, wherever you may be in the world. Uh, Let me just share my slides. Give me a minute. All right. Can you see it?
Yes, Teddy, we can see it. It's
All right.
perfect.
So again, good evening. And before anything else, may I invite you to a few moments of silence for the victims of the ongoing imperialist genocide in Palestine. Let us remember that more than 64,000 have been killed by the Zionist entity, including thousands of women, children, and elderly. So, a few moments of silence, please. Thank you. Long live the struggle of the Palestinian people.
Long live.
All right, so let me give you a brief history of the US bases in the Philippines. More than 120 years ago, a genocide also took place in my country. It's called the Philippine-American War. Around 200,000 to 300,000 Filipinos died because of that war. More than a million if we include those who died of disease, hunger, and other hardships from the brutal US invasion of my country. Now, To achieve this occupation, the US built military bases as strategic strongholds to, first of all, suppress the people's revolutionary uprisings, as well as to serve as launch pads for the expansion and control of the United States over the entire Asia Pacific. So, in total, more than 20 military bases and facilities were established across the country. And in this slide, you can see some of the major military bases that they built: Subic Naval Base, Clark Airfield, um, John Hay in the summer capital of the Philippines. That's their rest and recreation base. And a military base also in the middle of the capital city of Manila, which is now a Philippine base, Camp Aguinaldo. So it is not surprising that when Imperial Japan tried to control Asia during World War II, their primary targets included these bases, Subic Naval Base and Clark Air Base, along with Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. So this is a picture of the US actually bombing its own base, Clark Air Base, because at the time, the Japanese forces occupied these bases. So the US had to carpet bomb their own base. Now, after World War II, the US granted the Philippines independence, but on the condition that several agreements would be entered into, in effect, making us a neo-colony of the United States. Through the Parity Amendment, Americans were given equal rights to use our natural resources and operate public utilities. Through the Belt Trade Act, a free trade agreement, the Philippine economy was aligned to US interests. And through the Military Bases Agreement, the US retained 23 military bases and facilities for 99 years, covering approximately 240,000 hectares of land. This included the 28,000-hectare Subic Naval Base in Zambales, in central Philippines, Central Luzon, and the 64,000-hectare Clark Air Base in Pampanga. So these two were the largest US military bases outside the US mainland. Paired with these agreements was strict US command and control over the armed forces of the Philippines through the Joint US Military Advisory Group. So through the JUSMAG and other agreements, the US provided funding, supply of arms and equipment, doctrine, and training to the armed forces of the Philippines. Thus, these bases served as pillars of the colonial and later neo-colonial rule of the US over the Philippines in support of US global dominance, serving as launching pads for military intervention and wars of aggression in many countries. And that map shows the entire complex of US bases all over the world during the Cold War, right after World War II. So these bases were used, for example, for quelling the Boxer Rebellion in China in the 1900s, sending troops to the Soviet Union in 1918, the Korean War in the 1950s, Vietnam and Indochina in the 1960s, to the Gulf War and other wars in the Middle East in the early 1990s. In particular, Subic Base served as a base for the US 7th Fleet. This is the largest fleet in the US Navy. Its naval supply depot was considered the largest in the world. So Clark Air Base served as headquarters for the 30th US Air Force and its third tactical wing, with its plethora of air assets. The bases also served as storage sites for their nuclear weapons that threatened the security of the whole region. Now, how did the Filipino people oppose these bases? The people's opposition to the bases was clear from the start. The bases caused the dislocation or exclusion of local peasant and indigenous peoples' populations from their lands. Clark Airfield, for example, was built on the land of the Aitas of Central Luzon, while Camp John Hay was built on the lands of the Ibaloy tribe of the Cordilleras. While records are sparse, it is safe to conclude that the transformation of the US forces from being liberators against Spanish colonialism to becoming colonizers themselves were opposed by the original occupants of these baselands. To this day, these indigenous tribes have been denied their rights over these ancestral domains. Even after the American War, the Philippine-American War, remnants of the revolutionary movement resisted the colonizers. During a Labor Day rally in 1903, workers called for death to imperialism. The original Communist Party, born from the workers' movement in 1931, included independence in its program. The youth movement of the 1930s also played a significant role, with the Philippine Youth Party calling for freedom from US imperialism. In the 1950s and 60s, protests erupted against the abuses by US soldiers, including cases of rape and violence in communities around the bases. These protests resulted in changes to the military bases agreement, which reduced the duration of the base's stay from 99 years down to 25 years, thus setting 1991 as the end of the agreement. In 1968, the Communist Party was re-established with its program for a national democratic revolution aimed against imperialism, domestic feudalism, and fascism. A year later, the party established the New People's Army as its armed wing. In the 1970s, amid then President Marcos's imposition of martial law, this was the father of the current president, the dictator Ferdinand Marcos, the anti-bases campaign was part and parcel of the people's struggle against the US Marcos dictatorship. The relationship between the puppet fascist state of Marcos and its US imperialist master had become vividly clear to the Filipino people. So all efforts were focused on dismantling the US Marcos regime, and with it, the neo-colonial and semi-feudal system, including the bases that served only the comprador bourgeoisie, the big landlords, and the foreign imperialists. Throughout the 1980s, Clark and Subic Base became centers of protest. Large mass actions were led by various sectors from the youth, the workers, the peasants, women, even church people. Aside from national Democrats, other political forces joined the broad anti-bases alliances. Wide coalitions were formed, such as the Nuclear Free Philippines Coalition, the Anti-Bases Coalition, the Anti-Basing Kilusan, and the Anti-Treaty Movement. In 1989, the NPA assassinated Colonel James Rowe. He was the chief of the Jusmag Army Division, which provided counterinsurgency training for the Philippine Armed Forces in tandem with the US Central Intelligence Agency. So all these actions, the mass movement, parliamentary struggle, these alliances, even the armed movement, all these actions laid the foundation for the most important victory on September 16, 1991, when the Philippine Senate voted to end the RPUS military bases agreement. Despite heavy pressure from the Corazon Aquino regime, Washington, and the powerful pro-bases lobby, thousands of people took to the streets to oppose a new bases treaty. 12 senators voted against the RPUS Treaty of Friendship, Cooperation, and Security, that's what they call the new agreement, that would have extended the stay of the military bases for another 10 years. The Senate vote was the product of a long, broad, and militant mass movement that expressed opposition in the streets, in various communities, and through various forms of struggle. That day marked a victory for national sovereignty, proof that the people can assert their independence and right to self-determination against a giant foreign power. Now, let me discuss the new phase of US military presence in the Philippines. So let's move forward to the present day. The bases may have been dismantled, but the presence and influence of the US military remained. By 1999, a visiting forces agreement was signed, followed by annual joint military exercises called Balikatan, or shoulder to shoulder. This was followed by the Mutual Logistics Support Agreement in 2002, the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement in 2014, and a new version of the Bilateral Security Agreement between the US and the Philippines in 2024, which updated the obsolete 1951 Mutual Defense Treaty. Thus, since 2001, endless military exercises have been held between US and Philippine troops. Next year, more than 500 exercises are scheduled. So that's even more than the number of days in a year. That's the number of exercises they have scheduled for 2026. So to date, 9 EDCA sites, technically these are Philippine bases housing US troops and military facilities, have transformed the entire country into a forward-based complex, including missile systems and communications and intelligence facilities. Coming up in the next few years or months is a US ammunitions factory, ship maintenance and repair facilities, and a military industrial corridor along the Philippine West Coast. There have been various pretexts for the presence of US troops and bases in Philippine soil. It was anti-communism during the Cold War, counter-terrorism during the War on Terror, mutual defense with the rising threat of Chinese expansionism, and humanitarian aid and disaster relief in the era of climate change. But the truth is that these are used to deepen and widen US control over the region's economy, politics, and security. Worse, thousands of Filipinos have become victims of human rights violations and breaches of international humanitarian law under the guise of a war against insurgency and terrorism designed and directed under the US Counterinsurgency Guide. So we view the return of US troops and military bases within the broader context of the US's global maneuvers, including its instigation of Russia to invade Ukraine, its support of the colonial and genocidal regime in Israel, coups and embargoes against Caribbean countries like Venezuela that resist US hegemony, and using the Philippines as a pawn in its dangerous rivalry with China. All these bring not peace or security, but oppression and war. So, comrades, the history clearly teaches us that true freedom is not granted, it is fought for. The ouster of the US bases in 1991 was achieved through the broad struggle of our people. We achieved victory because we effectively linked our struggle for democracy, social justice, and reform to the struggle for national liberation against imperialism. So even the sectoral demands of the workers, for example, or the students, we always make it a point to raise the understanding of that issue to the level of the national liberation and the fight against imperialism and fascism. And this struggle was fought on all fronts, from legal, parliamentary struggles, militant street actions, to armed revolution. Today, imperialism and fascism continue to wreak havoc on the world. And that is why we have to intensify our global struggle to smash imperialism and defeat fascism. So on that note, I end my presentation. Thank you very much. Down with imperialism, long live international solidarity. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Bayan Chair Comrade Teddy Casino, for presenting a comprehensive history of colonialism, Spanish colonialism, and US neocolonialism and imperialism, and our long-standing struggle against the U.S. military bases waged by our ancestors. And it's really very encouraging to hear from Teddy that our indigenous peoples fiercely defended their ancestral lands, ancestral domains, while peasants and workers joined both legal and armed revolutionary movements for land and against imperialist bases. So this panoramic history reflects our struggle and victory, yet also reveals how US imperialism continues to hijack that legacy, not because it is strong, but because it is in crisis. So we are witnessing, as Teddy emphasized, a living history marked by ongoing imperialist domination through US military bases and the determined, persistent fight of our people for national sovereignty, an inseparable fight for our land, our waters, and our very source of life. So let's not forget, Bayan's call turn imperialist wars to wars for national liberation. Thank you so much, Teddy. And now we proceed to our next speaker. He will discuss Puerto Rico's struggle to reclaim sovereignty from US military bases and colonial control. Um, our next speaker is, he currently serves as a second vice president of the Puerto Rico Bar Association, where he chairs the Death Penalty Issues Committee. And he also contributes to multiple other committees and the association's foundation board. He is also the spokesperson for the Puerto Rico Pro-Human Rights Committee, advocating for self-determination, anti-repression, and the rights of political prisoners. He has pursued advanced studies in economics, mediation, negotiation, and international conflict resolution, and graduated summa cum laude in law. But even more than that, his time as a law student, uh, our comrade was a committed student leader who played a pivotal role in mobilizing scores of people in the victorious 2004 struggle to expel the US naval base from Puerto Rico. And we will hear that complete story from our comrade, attorney Kevin Miguel Rivera Medina. The floor is yours, Comrade Kevin.
Thank you, Sarah. Before turning to Spanish, I just want to thank Teddy for his presentation, and of course, you and the ILPS for this opportunity. It's an honor to be here with you. I will share a screen just with a little bit of some maps and maybe some pictures too, as Teddy did. So if I'm able to switch to Spanish now. I will do so. So remember, you have there in your screen, you have the more button, so you can switch to from the original sound to any other language. So thank you to the interpreters for this great work that they are doing right now. So turning to Spanish, muchas gracias. Bienvenidas,
Thank you
bienvenidos
so
todos
much. I
a
want
esta
to welcome
presentación.
you all to this
Para mí ha
presentation that
sido
we have
tremendo
today.
ver la
For me, it has
presentación
been great to
de
see
Teddy anterior,
Teddy's
porque la realidad es que
presentation
Puerto
on
Rico y
Philippines
Filipinas
before
tienen
mine,
mucho en
because the
común
truth is
a
that
pesar
Puerto
de la
Rico and
enorme
Philippines have a
distancia
lot of things in
que
common,
tenemos
even though we're so far
entre
away.
ambos,
Both
naciones.
nations are
Bueno,
so far
yo
away.
quisiera comenzar hablándole un
I would like
poquito
to
sobre
start
lo que es la región del
by
Caribe.
talking about
En
the
el Caribe,
Caribbean
por aquí
region.
entonces me
In the
voy a dar un
Caribbean
poco
region,
de share screen. Vamos a
I'm going to
compartir.
share my screen right now so that you can see the
Pantalla.
maps.
Si ven ahí, tenemos
If you can
el
see
mapa
over
del
here,
Caribe.
we have the
Quiero que
map
vean muy
of the
bien el norte
Caribbean.
oriental de Estados Unidos.
I
Quiero que
want
vean
to
bien dónde
see,
está México, justo del
I
sur de
would
los
like for
Estados
you to
Unidos.
see
Y
where
está
Mexico
toda
is
esta
related to the
área de
US and all of this
Centroamérica en
area of
América.
Central
Nosotros estamos
America.
en el medio.
It's
Tenemos a
in the
Nicaragua.
middle.
Recuerden que Nicaragua tiene
We
que
have
pasar del lado sur del río.
Nicaragua.
Va a pasar también un canal
We know that
que es el lado sur
Nicaragua had a big lake where the canal that is now in Panama was going to go
También está,
through.
obviamente, en la parte más
We also have the southern
Panamá
part of
con
Central
sus
America, which
tremendos
is
canales,
Panama,
el canal
with the
comercial y el
tremendous
canal de
commercial
propósito.
canal that
Fíjense
also
como en el
serves
bastante sur
other
también está
purposes, not only
Colombia y Venezuela
commercial.
y
You can
entonces
see that in the
tenemos el
south is
resto de las
Colombia
islas
and
del Caribe,
Venezuela,
desde
and we
Cuba
have the
hacia
rest
más
of the countries
al
of the
oeste
Caribbean. We
del
have
Caribe. Las
Cuba,
Antillas Mayores incluyen
we
la
have
española
major
y
Antillas, including
Dominicana
Spaniard and
con Jamaica
Antilla
e
with
incluso y a
Haiti
Puerto
and
Rico.
Dominican
Puerto
Republic.
Rico
We
está ahí
have
justo
Puerto Rico.
al lado de República
We
Dominicana,
can see that
comenzando
Puerto
también
Rico is
lo que
right
le llaman
besides the
las
Dominican
Antillas
Republic,
Menores, simplemente
which
porque son un
starts,
poco más pequeñas en
which
tamaño.
begins this
Hay muchísimos
uh,
países que en algún
smaller
momento pertenecieron
Antillas,
o todavía a
and
veces
these
ejerce
all
también un poder
were
colonial por
belonged
parte de
to
Europa sobre ellas, pero han
Europe at some
ejercido
point,
muchas de
and
ellas
now
una
there's this
independencia
colonial
hacia
power over
el
them, and it has
oeste, por lo
this.
menos de algún
They're
modo, de,
trying
de
to
algunos de los
gain the independence.
cuerpos internacionales. Toda esa agua que está
All of this
entre esas
water that
islas,
is in
Suramérica
this
y
island
Centroamérica, a eso se
in
le
Southern
conoce el
America and
Mar
North
Caribe.
America, this
Así que
is
cuando hablamos
known
del
as the
Caribe, hablamos de ese
Caribbean
gran
Sea. When
Caribe
we
que
talk about
son
the
todas esas
Caribbean, the
naciones
Great
que
Caribbean is
tocan
all of these
en sus
nations
costas
that
las
touch
aguas
or that are
caribeñas. Bueno,
located in the
sosteniendo ahí
Caribbean waters.
el Mar Caribe, debemos decir
So, taking
que
this
en los
into
tiempos
account,
más
we need to
dorados
say
no hubo
that
piedad. Nosotros tuvimos
in the times of the
la
European
presencia de
colonization,
conquista y
we had
colonización
the presence of the
exterminio también de
conquistadors
nuestras
and
comunidades
the colonization, and they
originarias.
exterminated
España
or tried to
especialmente,
exterminate
Francia,
our indigenous
Inglaterra,
peoples. All of
de
this was
Holanda,
perpetrated by
de Dinamarca
Spain,
y de
Denmark,
Portugal. Puerto
Holland,
Rico,
Portugal,
si lo ven
Great
ahí,
Britain, and
Puerto Rico
France.
era
Puerto Rico,
básicamente
as you
una
can see
puerta
over
de
here,
entrada
was
al
like
Caribe, no
the
solamente por
door
una
to the
cuestión de
Caribbean,
defensa militar,
not only
sino
because of the
también
military
para el
defense issue,
desarrollo
but also
comercial de
for
muchas
commercial purposes,
de lo que era el comercio y de la mercancía.
specifically
La
for
mayor parte de la
merchandise.
mercancía venía de lo que era el
Most of
situado
the
de México,
merchandise
el
came
situado
from
mexicano.
the
Los barcos
Mexican
salían
situado.
desde México hacia Europa cargados de oro y de algunos
The
otros
ships would
bienes.
come from Mexico to Europe
Y claro,
with
para
gold
poder
and
llegar a
other
Europa tenían que
goods.
pasar por alguno de los canales que estaban ahí.
And
El canal
to
que era
go to
mejor para
Europe, they
pasar,
had to
porque era el más
pass
cercano entonces
one
quizás a
of the
Europa
canals
bajo
over
el
there.
dominio español, era Puerto Rico. Así que
And the
Puerto Rico
easiest one
ciertamente
was the
fue un
one
puerto de
besides
transbordo
Puerto Rico. So
para ese
Puerto Rico
situado
was a port
marino.
to bring the
Les
goods
quiero
from the
mostrar
Caribbean
un
to
poquito
Europe.
de cómo era que, si
I
tienen
would like to
esa
show
imagen,
you
cómo se
this
fortificó
image,
a Puerto Rico
how
para que Puerto
Puerto
Rico
Rico
entonces
became this
fuese
fortress
pues un punto importante de
so that
defensa.
it would
Ese
become
es
an
el viejo San
important
Juan
point for
y ese es
defense.
el
This is
morro
Old
en
San
San Juan.
Juan.
Esa es la
This is
punta del morro y desde ahí entonces se hacía
the
gran parte
point of
del
San
transporte.
Juan.
¿Está bien? Pero vamos a regresar un poquito
But I want
a
us
ese
to
mapa
backtrack a
porque
little
es
bit
importante.
to the map.
¿Por qué es importante? Porque no sé si
This is
pueden ver
important because I
que
don't
hay
know if you
varios
can
canales,
see over
aunque les quiero
here, we
adelantar
have
un poco
several
esto porque esos
canals,
canales realmente vinieron a tener una mayor importancia
and they
durante
were
el
very
siglo
important
pasado.
during
Ahora,
last century.
este es el
But
archipiélago de Puerto
here
Rico,
we can see
con algunas
Puerto
islas.
Rico's
La isla más grande
archipelago.
se llama
We
la isla
have
de Puerto Rico.
the biggest
Tienen ahí
island is
también
called Puerto
identificada la
Rico,
isla de
and
Culebra
you can
al este.
identify
Al
Culebra
sureste,
Island
está la isla de
in
Vieques,
the
vamos a estar hablando mucho de ella.
eastern
Y
part.
al extremo oeste,
And on
también
the
una
western
gran
part,
meseta
we
no
can see
habitada, es la isla de
a
Mona,
great
que
island
es
that
la
is
isla
not
más
inhabited. It's called
investigadora del
Mona
mundo,
Island.
pero
It
está
has a
de hecho
lot
está
of
más cerca
scientific
de la República
research,
Dominicana que de
but
Puerto
this
Rico,
island is
pero es muy
closer to the DR
importante
than to Puerto
por ejemplo, el
Rico.
canal
But it's
de
very
navegación también,
important
ese canal de la Mona.
because it
Ahora,
is part
si
of
van a ver entre
transportation
Vieques y la
canal.
isla grande de Puerto Rico,
You can
hay
see
toda
that
una costa, ahí está identificada con
a
Humacao. Esa costa que
coast
está identificada con Humacao
that is called Humacao over here,
tiene una gran base militar.
and it has
El
a big
noroeste, donde
military
dice
base.
Aguadilla,
On the
también tiene una gran base
northwest, where it
militar
says Navia, it
otra de
also
esas
has
bases
a
militares
military base,
más
and we're going to
importantes.
talk
Y
about
les
them
estaba ahorita
in a
hablando
little while.
sobre el morro. Bueno,
I was
eh,
talking about
me
the
parece
Morro over
importante
here, the
indicarles
fortress.
que, voy a hablar
I think
un
it's
poco más alto,
important to tell
desde que
you
hubo la invasión de los Estados
that
Unidos en el
since the US
1898,
invaded
luego de la
in
guerra
1898
cubano-hispanoamericana,
after
no
the
voy a hablar ahorita
Cuban
habla de la guerra
War, we always talk
hispanoamericana.
about
La
the
realidad es que todo esto comenzó con la
Hispano-American
guerra de
War,
independencia
but
de
it's
Cuba de la cual Puerto Rico era una
actually
parte importante.
the war for independence of Cuba, and Puerto Rico played an important role. And this was, there was a political party that was created both for the independence of Cuba, but also for Puerto Rico. And we know that the Monroe Doctrine that seeks to benefit the US. And right now we're seeing the revival of this Monroe Doctrine because the US does not want Latin Americans in their territories that have been stolen from other indigenous peoples. They don't want Latin American people, but they do want Latin American territories, and this happens in Puerto Rico. They want our land. They don't want Puerto Rican people that are living in this land. And we suffer a lot of mistreatment from the US. So during the Monroe Doctrine, and here I want to go back to the map of the Caribbean, Puerto Rico played a very important role because for the domination of all of the southern part of the Americas, they had to have dominion over the market. So that is why the Panama Canal was created. But to be able to create the Panama Canal, they needed to ensure military and maritime passages. This one is called the wind passages, the vientos passages. But there's a small island called the Navassa Island that is between Jamaica, Haiti, and Cuba. So they not only created the Guantanamo base in the southeast part of Cuba, but they also colonized Navassa Island that has been claimed by our Haitian brothers and sisters. So as we can see here, we have the Mona Canal. This is a very important route. And it's a passage that works from the Panama Canal all the way to Europe. The Legada Passage is in the east part of Puerto Rico, and it includes not only the other islands of Puerto Rico, Culebra and Navas, but also the North American Virgin Islands that are beside Puerto Rico. These islands were bought by the US from Denmark, I think in 1917, in a bid. After that, we have the British Virgin Island. This passage is very important because it's the closest one between the Caribbean region and South America towards Europe, but it's very difficult to navigate for a big ship. Although from Puerto Rico and Vieques, there is a big passage that is very deep that can be very useful for big naval ships, both for submarines, but also for military ships. On the 20th century, there has always been this intention from Germany to come to the Americas, specifically to the Caribbean, understanding the Caribbean as an important region. So for the Monroe Doctrine to not be able to reach Europe. So the Caribbean has been seen as this area for protection, a buffer zone between for South America and Central America. So there's always been plans to establish some type of balance so that the US would not have dominion over South America. The truth is that they didn't reach this, and there has always been dominion of the US on South America. Unfortunately, the reality is that Puerto Rico has always been militarized. Maybe by the Spaniard militaries or the US military. Even though we voted in Puerto Rico to not have um, the US citizenship, it was imposed on us. And the idea for this is to have Puerto Rico as a front line. And we have been used as a front line against the Korean War and against and in the World War II. I'm sorry, Kevin's audio is cutting off.
Kevin, your audio is cutting off.
Kevin's audio seems to be cutting off.
Oh,
Your audio is cutting off. It's
can
breaking.
can you hear me now?
Yes, it's better now.
Okay, well, let's see.
Yeah.
Okay, let's try again. Okay. Estaba hablando de que
I
las
was
bases aéreas se han reducido
saying
de
that the
11
air
a 5
bases
o
have
6 bases en
reduced
el día
from
de hoy.
11 to 5 or
Mayormente
6
por el
up
cambio
until
tecnológico.
today, mostly
Antes
because
era más
of the
importante tener una
technological
presencia
changes that
física
we have
en los
seen.
lugares.
It was very
Hoy
important
día pues
before to
sabemos
have a
que
physical
con la
presence in the
tecnología
places,
esa
but
presencia
today we
física
know
no es
that
tan
that
necesaria.
physical
El
presence
dron,
is completely
tecnología hasta satelital,
unnecessary. They have
hasta
satellite
más alcance que
technology
puede haber con drones
that has a
y
lot
con
of,
otros
and
aviones.
we also
En este
have,
pequeño
we're also
gráfica
seeing a lot
se hace
more
cada
reach
vez
with
menos
drones
importante.
and whatnot. So
Sin
that
embargo, aquí
geographical
había dos
closeness
bases
is
que todavía tenían una
completely,
importancia muy grande
it's not
para
important
nosotros.
anymore. There were two
Era la
bases that
base
were
Rainy,
very
que era una
important for the
base
US. The Rainy base,
básicamente aérea en
that
el
was
noroeste
aerial
de la
base
isla,
in the
cubriendo
northwest part of the
un mapa
island that we
que
saw in
teníamos
the
en el
map.
bloque anterior, y en el sureste de la isla la base Rainy.
And in the
Rainy
southern part
era
of
una ciudad
the
completa, más de 42
island, it was the
millas
Rainy
de
base.
costa,
It was a
que
full
tenía
city. It
1,000 millas
has
de
4,000
Estados
miles
Unidos
of
en Puerto
coast.
Rico. De hecho, había una línea directa
And
de
there
la
was a
oficina
direct
del
line
gobernador,
between the office of the
no desde
governor,
la oficina del gobernador a Roosevelt Roads, sino de Roosevelt
not
Roads
to Roosevelt
hacia la
Road,
oficina del gobernador.
not from
Sí,
the governor's
realmente
office
tenía
towards the
el
Roosevelt
poder
Road base, but
político en
rather
Puerto
the
Rico.
other way.
No era un gobernador en Puerto
So
Rico, era realmente
it
el
was
almirante que
not the
estuviese
governor who
detrás
had the
de
political
Roosevelt
power
Roads que pudiese
over
dar instrucciones
Puerto
al
Rico, but
gobernador
rather
en
the
el centro de mando en San
military
Juan, que
head
llamamos la
in the
Fuerza Aérea
Roosevelt
en Puerto
Road
Rico,
base, the one
el
that had the
gobernador
power.
de turno. Así que además de eso, pues siempre, como ya vemos, igual que en Filipinas,
As we can
había un gobierno
see
marioneta, un
such as
gobierno
in
muy
Philippines,
marioneta
we
de
had a puppet
intereses militares de
government.
Puerto
It
Rico.
was a
Pero
puppet of
incluso
the
esos
military
poderes militares
interests
eran
in
los que
Puerto
en
Rico, but that
ocasiones iban al
military
Congreso de los
power
Estados Unidos
and
a
those militaries
cabildear
were the
que a
ones
Puerto Rico
who
le
would
llegaran
go
algunas
to the
ayudas
Congress
federales. ¿Y
to
por qué era eso?
lobby for
¿Porque
Puerto
querían el
Rico, and
bienestar
we
para
would
Puerto Rico? No.
receive
Porque
federal
querían
aid
que
in Puerto
la
Rico.
ciudadanía
And
estuviese
it was
apaciguada
because
ante las
they
cosas que
wanted
estaban
the
ocurriendo
citizenship, the
alrededor.
people in Puerto Rico,
Así que
to
de esa
be
manera es que
dull,
uno
to be
va
quiet.
ajustando
So they wanted to
algunas
adjust.
llaves para que la gente no explote y de esa
They
manera
wanted
se
to
mantengan
adjust and to just
tranquilas.
give enough to the people for
Nosotros
them to be
tuvimos
quiet and
una
calm and
presencia
not
militar
resist.
seria, muy
We
seria,
have
antes
had
de
a
la
very
Segunda Guerra
serious
Mundial,
military presence
Corea también.
from the in the Vietnam
Pero Puerto
War,
Rico
after World
fue
War
utilizado
II. But
no
Puerto Rico has
solamente
been
para tener
used
equipo
not
militar,
only to
sino fue
have
utilizado
military
para
equipment,
prácticas
but
militares
also
activas. ¿Qué
for
quiere decir eso?
for active
Que mientras
military
aquí
practices,
vive gente,
which means that
aquí se estaba
people are living
bombardeando
in Puerto Rico,
incluso
but we were also
estos
receiving,
recursos
there
naturales.
was being
Y yo solamente les voy a enseñar
bombings in Puerto Rico in
uno de los
our natural
tamaños
resources, and I'm
como
going to show
ustedes
you
ven
one
por
of
aquí.
them.
Ustedes ven esa playa.
So we can see this
Paraíso de
beach
playa.
over
Se
here.
llama
It seems
Playa
like a
Flamenco
paradise,
en
right? It's
Culebra.
called Flamenco.
Culebra, como
It's
les dije,
Flamenco.
aparece
It's
en la parte
in the
norte.
Culebra Island.
Culebra es una de las 5 playas más bonitas del mundo y entre
Culebra
otras
is one of the
aparece
most beautiful
la
beaches in
campaña
the
flamenca.
world, top 5, and you can see it
Esta
in
playa
different
de
web
flamenco estaba
pages.
siendo utilizada
This beach in Flamenco was being bombed in military practice. It was not allowed for people to be there to enjoy it. You can see here we have the military waste that they left over there. And today, some of the tourists that are coming here use this not as a memory of history, of this horrible history, of this struggle history, because we took out the Navy from the Culebra Island. They didn't want to go, but we kicked them out. But now this is, like a tourist attraction for many people. But for us, the Puerto Ricans, this is what militarization left us in the Culebra Island. It's a paradise that was almost destroyed. And thanks to the people, it is being regenerated. It is being reconstructed. In Bieles, which is in the south, there was a complete displacement of the population. Maybe not absolute, but around 60% of the population were displaced. And with time, more people needed to get out because they destroyed the sugarcane industry. Bieles was a commercial center in Puerto Rico. But given the military presence, the economic aspects of this place were completely destroyed. And we also, and this Isla Arena is Vieques. So Vieques took control of most part of the island. On one side, the Navy took this control, displaced the agriculture industry, and it just created a space for paramilitaries. Instead of having production, now this island just became a place full of bars, just for the enjoyment of the militaries. So they displaced all of the economy. Vieques right now is full of heavy metals because of this use, and it was also rented to NATO and to other countries of Latin America for them to do military practices. There's a lot of uranium in the land and in the waters of Vieques. Around 80% of the fisher people in Vieques are dying because of cancer. Pollution has been terrible in Puerto Rico, specifically in Vieques. Puerto Rico has 16 establishments of Superfund. Superfund is a big fund that is supposed to be destined for cleaning, but these territories have not been cleaned. We estimate that in Vieques, the cleaning would be around $800 million, would cost $800 million. And with the with the water passage of this area, we have seen a lot of nuclear submarines. And unfortunately, we have also seen how they are stealing the water, the river waters, to be able to satisfy the Ceiba military base, even though people are not having access to water. The situation in Culebra and Vieques had a lot of issue in the 70s after Vietnam War. There was a lot of manifestations, a lot of mobilization, civil disobedience, and I want to show you some pictures as to how after having, and you can see over here, in the 70s, the fisher people were struggling against the naval ships. They were throwing rocks. And all of this reminds us of how our brothers and sisters in Palestine have had to throw rocks and stones to the Israeli militaries that are attacking them. This is Carlos Zenon. He died a little while ago. And it seems like David versus Goliath, right? He was fighting against the Navy. And this was in the 70s. And the 70s um, achieved to take out the Navy from the Culebra. In 1999, a bomb fell where it was not supposed to fall. As I was telling you, Vieques was being used as a military practice. A bomb fell very close to an observation center and it killed a Puerto Rican person. He was a civil employer, he was not military. And his name was David Sáenz. With the killing of David Sáenz, there was a big mobilization of the people. And what we have seen is that it seems like it only takes a small crisis for people to start moving and struggling. And there was, you can see, this is other photograph of the 70s struggle. And this was them being arrested because they were struggling as human shields for asking for the to stop the bombing. I want to show you this woman, Isabel Rosado. She's an icon. She has been an icon for the struggles, the revolutionary nationalist struggles, those type of struggles, such as in Philippines that we saw earlier. She was a social worker. She was a struggler, and she was kind of old, and she was struggling. When David Sáenz was murdered, there was a group that started going to these territories. You can see this. I showed you these territories green and full of vegetation, but after the bombings, you can see how the territory was so eroded. Those green, beautiful territories were eroded and desertic. And we started appropriating and occupying the lands and serving as human shields. You can see all of the mountains of the missiles here. This is in Vieques. Some of the missiles are still in the bottom of the ocean. And there was not only active mobilizations in Vieques, this is the entrance of the Garcia. The militaries inside. But we started creating campings for civil disobedience. You can see the photos in the bottom of the screen, and you can see the sculptures, and you can see the structures that were being built. And at the bottom, and in the farther away, there's a quay. I was living there for a while, and we would go from Isla Grande to the quay, and we were able to build a small camp in that quay, and it was so beautiful. And we knew that beside in the sides of the quay there were live bombs, and this led to a series of arrestings from the military. There was more than 1,000 people that were arrested, including me. And they would take us to the federal tribunal in Puerto Rico, a tribunal that was from the US government. And they would take us to jail, and they would sentence us. And we would get out and come back to the struggle. This uprising led to historical marches and mobilizations from thousands of people, millions of people in Puerto Rico, and we were able to kick out the Navy, not only from Vieques, but also from Roosevelt Road, which was the other big military base that they had in the other side of Isla Grande. And this is not only the march, a protesting march, but also a victory march. You can see the picture in the right says Vieques triumph. So this is to
Bueno,
celebrate our
¿qué
victories.
sucede en la actualidad? Luego de
So right
múltiples luchas
now,
por sacar a la
in the
Marina de
current
pie, que se
present
celebra
day,
uno
after
de
all of
poder
these struggles to be able
algo
to
muy
kick out the
reducido de
Navy
la
and to
capacidad
have a
militar en Puerto
small,
Rico, en los
uh,
últimos meses
a,
hemos
a
visto que la
reduced
presencia
military
militar
in
de los
the
Estados
Puerto
Unidos
Rico,
en el
we have seen in
Caribe
the
es la
last month
mayor
that the
presencia militar
presence
de los
of the
Estados Unidos
U.S., the
en todo
military
el
presence of
mundo
the
en este
U.S.
momento.
in the Caribbean
Esto
is
no
the
lo estoy
biggest
diciendo
presence
yo,
in the
pueden
whole
buscar
world.
la
This is
noticia,
not
la cantidad de
something that I'm
buques
saying. You
y
can see
submarinos
this
que
in
sí
the news.
utilizan, pero hay muchos buques
The
que sí están
the
siendo
ships,
utilizados.
naval ships, the
Demuestra que el
submarines
Caribe ahora
are
mismo es
showing
la
that the
mayor presencia
Caribbean right
militar
now
de
has
los Estados
the
Unidos en todo el mundo,
biggest
mucho más
military
allá que
presence
en
from the
otras
US
zonas
in the
del mundo.
world,
¿Para
a lot
qué esa
more than
presencia
war
militar?
zones.
Algunos han dicho que son simples ejercicios,
And
otros
even
dicen
though
que
some
es
have said that
una
these are
demostración de
just
fuerza, lo que llaman show of
exercises
force.
or the
Otros
show of
indican que realmente se
force,
está preparando
others are
algún
saying that
tipo
the
de
US are
invasión a países
preparing
como
an
podría ser Venezuela.
invasion
Bueno,
to countries like
para lo que sea,
Venezuela. We
nosotros
don't really
ciertamente estamos
know,
sirviendo ahora como un gran
but what we can
portaaviones
see is
del
that
ejército de los Estados
we
Unidos
uh,
en el
are
Caribe.
like
La realidad es que con el ascenso de los BRICS, la
what we are
falta de
seeing is that we are
cohesión
like
que
an
tenemos en
aircraft
Europa, que
carrier
de momento
for
dice
the
tener
US.
poder en el resto del mundo, pues se ha impulsado un mayor gasto
And
militar.
we can
Eso
see
es
that
noble.
the US has
Hay un
pushed
mayor
for a
gasto militar, no
bigger
solamente en Estados Unidos, sino en
military
Europa
investment,
también.
not only
Fíjense
not
cómo Trump
only in the
está
US but also
perdiendo en
in
Gaza,
Europe. You
a
can see
pesar
that Trump
de
is losing in
decir que
Gaza,
están
even though
perdiendo en
the
Gaza.
genocide is
Están perdiendo en
ongoing. They are
Ucrania,
losing
están
in Gaza. They are
perdiendo
losing in
esa
Ukraine.
guerra
They
tarifaria
are
que
losing
tienen
this
contra el
horrible
resto del
war that
mundo.
they are
Y
having
encima de
against
eso
the world,
tienen
the rest of the
los
world. And
expedientes
on
de
top of that,
Epstein Files.
we have
La
the
realidad
Epstein
es que
files.
no están
So the
ganando la guerra,
reality is
simplemente
that the
que
US is
para
not winning the
ganarla
war. So it
y
seems
quizás el
like they
Caribe
want
era
to win something, and maybe the
el
Caribbean
punto más fácil y sencillo
might
de
be
eso.
the
Pues
most
han
easiest
vuelto a
place for
virar a
them.
las Américas
So they've
para
once again
apropiarse de
turned
sus
to the
recursos
Americas
naturales,
to
quizás
appropriate their
para
natural
anclarse a una
resources
nueva
and other
guerra petrolera
assets,
que
or
quizás pueden
maybe
ganar
for
y
an
que
oil
mantiene
war that
vivo
they
a,
can
a Marco
win,
Rubio,
and
que
that
sabemos que esto
that
es una
also
guerra
can keep
entre
Marco
Exxon y
Rubio
Chevron.
relevant, a
Bueno,
war between
prácticamente
Exxon and
abandonado
Chevron.
nuevamente el derecho internacional,
And of
que
course
también, si
international
se puede llamar
law
de esa manera,
and
práctica
has been
militar.
abandoned,
Yo
and
debo ir
also, if
terminando
we
ya,
can call it that way,
indicando que
quote
Puerto
unquote
Rico
military
anteriormente
ethics. I
utilizó
want to
para otras
say to
invasiones,
finish that Puerto
entre
Rico has
esas
been used
las
for
que
other
habían estado utilizadas
invasions,
en
the one
el
from the DR
65,
in
la de
the
Granada
in
en el 63,
1965,
la de
in
Panamá en el
Grenada in
89, entre
1983,
otras.
Panama in
Y hoy día,
1989,
tenemos,
among others. And
bueno,
today
el
we
último show
have
screen que tengo por aquí, tenemos aviones cazas
today we
F-35
have
en Puerto Rico. Cada uno de esos
F-35
vale
fighter
sobre
jets in Puerto
82
Rico. Each
millones de
one
dólares.
is worth
Tenemos aviones
$82.5
espías
million.
con torpedos
We
P-8,
have
que son los Poseidón. En Puerto Rico se están
Poseidon
haciendo
ships too
prácticas
in Puerto
militares de
Rico,
desembarco anfibio y estas fotos
has been
son de las
used
últimas
as
semanas en
amphibious
Puerto
landing
Rico.
exercises.
Fíjense
These are
cómo
photos
si
from the
antes,
last few weeks.
cada vez que uno de esos barcos anfibios va a las costas de
Anytime
Puerto
one of
Rico,
these
es una
amphibious ships
destrucción
comes
de
to
la
Puerto
costa.
Rico,
Y
creates a destruction
ciertamente
of the
Puerto
coast.
Rico se está
And of
convirtiendo
course, Puerto
o puede
Rico
ser
is becoming
en un
or can
blanco militar
become
de
a
otros
military
intereses en el
target for
Caribe.
other
Que el
interests in the
gobierno colonial
Caribbean.
en
The
Puerto Rico
colonial
está
government
siendo
in Puerto
aliado
Rico
de
is
Trump,
allied with
aliado de
Trump,
Israel,
is
con
allied with
todavía
Israel,
en la Guerra Fría.
using
Y la lucha
rhetoric
antimilitarista
regarding the
tendrá que
Cold War.
ser,
And the
como lo
anti-military
estamos aquí
struggle will
viendo
have
que lo
to
es
be,
en
as
estos
we are
momentos,
seeing, that
no
is right
solamente contra
now,
el enemigo
will have
imperial
to
que
be
nos
not
coloniza,
only
nos está
against the
colonizando,
imperial
sino
enemy that is
también el
colonizing us,
gobierno
but also
lacayo
against
y
the internal
civilista que está en Puerto Rico y que está entregando nuestro
assimilationalist
país a las
lackey
manos
government that is handing over
del
our country
ejército
to the
de los Estados
interests
Unidos para luego entonces,
and the
en
hands
protección,
of the
quedarse las
military of the
ventajas que
US,
nos dejan repartirle a los allegados
and
de
for
Trump.
us,
Por el
and for
momento
them to let them
es
play with the
una
crumbs
lucha
that they leave
principalmente
behind.
de sectores
For us is a
independentistas, pro
struggle
independencia de
for
Puerto
pro
Rico,
independence
pero
of Puerto
ciertamente
Rico, but
podría muy bien
also
convertirse, como se convirtió en
it
Vieques,
can
en una
also
gran
become
lucha de pueblo.
a referent of the big people struggle. And with this struggle spirit, we want to say, long live the solidarity between the peoples of the world, long live Palestine, long live the sovereignty of Venezuela, and long live Puerto Rico free too. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, attorney and comrade Kevin Medina, for helping us understand the geography and class struggle behind the Monroe Doctrine. You clearly showed how land and territory formed the foundation of U.S. military power, shaping not only foreign policy in colonies and semi-colonies, but also the very basis of governance, leading to the destruction of agricultural lands and plantations, turning them into foreign industrial and commercial zones, serving military interests. That's a very familiar, continuing history to us Filipinos. And this militarization has taken a heavy toll on the health of local communities. Um, and also, thanks for this crucial lesson from Puerto Rico's struggle against U.S. military bases. That crisis compels people to rise, resist, and reclaim their dignity. And this enduring fight demonstrates how adversity ignites collective strength and determination, forging powerful movements that challenge imperial domination and demand justice. Thank you so much, Comrade Kevin. And for our third speaker, we'll talk about the Sahel region. You're probably very interested to hear about what's been happening in Mali, in Burkina Faso, because we never really hear anything about these countries and their recent victories. So today, we will hear from our comrade from the Sahel region. He is Comrade Hamidou Jawara. He is one of the leaders of the farming or peasant movement in the Sahel region. He leads a community of organic farmers, providing accreditation to farmers who engage in agroecology. But more than that, he is very much engaged in international solidarity work grounded on anti-imperialist politics. So today, we have here with us to talk about military bases, conflict, and environmental devastation in the Sahel. And with the themes of resistance and solidarity. Everyone, please help me welcome Comrade Hamidou Jawara. Comrade Hamidou, the floor is yours. Is Comrade Hamidou is here, right?
Hello.
Oh, there you go. Can we remove the spotlight on me and put it on Comrade Hamidou?
Okay.
Thank
Bonjour.
you. Comrade, would you like to turn on your... Oh, there you go. Hi. Comrade Hamidou, can you hear
Est-ce que
me?
vous... oui, je vous entends. Est-ce que l'écran est partagé?
The floor is yours.
D'accord. D'accord. OK, c'est bon pour l'écran?
Is it okay for the screen? Yes.
Est-ce que pour l'écran, c'est bon? Les grands poules. Ok, merci. Ok, je voudrais, dans la base de ma
I'd like to
présentation,
remind you
par rapport à la lutte anti-impérialiste que le
about
peuple
the
de l'AES est en train
anti-imperialist
de mener
struggle
au Mali
that
actuellement.
we are waging at the present time.
Pour rappeler un peu, depuis les années 1960,
Since the
l'Afrique a
1960s,
officiellement accédé à
Africa has
l'indépendance
officially
politique,
achieved
mais elle
political
demeure toujours
independence,
dépendante des
but it
puissances
remains
extérieures sur
largely
les plans
dependent on external
économique,
powers
sécuritaire,
in
monétaire
economic,
et
security,
culturel.
monetary, and
Alors,
cultural
la
terms.
montée des mouvements populaires
So
dans
the
le
rise
Sahel
of popular
ayant
movements
conduit
in the
au
Sahel,
retrait des
which
forces
led to the
françaises,
withdrawal of
américaines,
French and American forces
du
from
Niger, du Burkina Faso, du Mali,
Mali,
de
Niger, and Burkina Faso, marks a new stage in the
les
anti-imperialist
pays du
struggle.
Sahel, notamment
The
l'AES,
Sahel
font face à un
countries,
tournant historique
particularly
vers le
Mali,
contre-impérialisme, en
are
particulier
facing a historic turning point in their
l'impérialisme
struggle against
occidental
imperialism,
représenté par les
particularly
anciennes puissances
Western
coloniales et leurs
imperialism,
alliés.
represented
Cette
by the
crise
former
s'inscrit
colonial
dans un
powers
contexte
and
de
their
remontée
allies. This
populaire,
struggle
de
is taking place in a
contestation, des
complex
interventions
context of
militaires
popular
étrangères
revolts, challenges to
et de
foreign military interventions,
réaffirmation
and
de la souveraineté
reaffirming
nationale.
national sovereignty.
Alors, pour ce qui est du Mali, son
So,
excellence
regarding
le colonel
Mali,
Assimi Goïta,
since
président,
2020, Mali has been under the
a
leadership of a
dicté trois
military
principes
power
qui guideront désormais les relations des
with a
populations
firm
avec lui,
anti-imperialist
notamment
stance,
en matière
expelling
de la
foreign and French
souveraineté du
forces from
Mali,
the country
le respect
after years
des
of
choix
military
stratégiques
presence
et des
under
choix
Operation
partenaires
Barkhane and other
opérés par le
operations.
Mali et la
The
défense
struggle
des
for
intérêts
sovereignty and national
et
independence are at
douaniers
the heart of
du
Malian
pays.
foreign policy.
Alors, pour contextualiser le cas
To
du
give you
Mali,
some
de l'AES,
context,
du Burkina et du Niger, il faut reconnaître que depuis
we
2020,
have to
sous la direction
recognize that
du Mali et
since
sous la direction du pouvoir unitaire, des
2020,
positions fermes anti-impérialistes qui a
the
mené à la
struggle for
destruction des
sovereignty
forces étrangères françaises
are
du
at
pays
the
dans les
heart of Malian
opérations
foreign
Barkhane,
policy.
la
The
MINUSMA
country
et la lutte
seeks to
contre
strengthen its
la
authority by
souveraineté et
rejecting
l'indépendance
old colonial
nationale
practices and
sous terre
fostering
dans
alliances
l'Afrique
with
septentrionale
partners
malienne aujourd'hui et
such
dans l'ensemble
as
des pays de l'AES.
Russia and
Le pays
China.
cherche à renforcer
The
son
goal
autorité en
is to
rejetant
free
les partenaires,
itself
en rejetant plutôt les anciennes pratiques coloniales et en favorisant des
from
alliances
foreign
avec des
influence and
partenaires
restore
comme
national
la Russie,
control
la
over
Chine et
its
la Turquie et
natural
d'autres.
resources
Et l'objectif de se
and
libérer des influences étrangères négatives qui a causé beaucoup de torts, et notamment
respect
sur le contrôle des ressources
for
naturelles et
political
le respect
decisions.
surtout des décisions politiques qui n'étaient pas du tout respectées et nos dirigeants avaient du mal à imposer leurs propres choix stratégiques et toujours sous l'influence étrangère. Alors, et, la présence militaire des anciennes puissances coloniales était perçue aussi comme une
Military
atteinte à
presence
la souveraineté nationale,
by old
avec
colonial
l'argument selon
forces
lequel ces puissances ne contribuent pas suffisamment à la lutte contre
was
le
seen
terrorisme, tout en
as
observant la
something that
situation.
did not contribute
Le
to the fight
Mali a
against
cherché à
terrorism.
établir son contrôle sécuritaire en limitant
And
l'influence
they
d'extérieur tout en renforçant
indeed
ses forces
they
armées locales
exacerbate the
avec des équipements
situation.
massifs, avec des acteurs aériens, terrestres, des recrutements massifs et la formation de l'armée malienne pour faire face aux nouvelles formes d'attaques récurrentes par-ci,
And
par-là et par le terrorisme. Alors, pour ce qui est des axes anti-impérialistes
regarding the
par la
anti-imperialist
Confédération de l'AES, il
axis
s'agit
by the Malian
de 7
Confederation,
axes, et sinon 7. D'abord, il
there
s'agit de
are
la souveraineté
7.
sécuritaire.
First of
Pour
all,
le
there's
Mali
the
et le peuple de l'AES,
security
il s'agit de
sovereignty.
renforcer la solidarité entre les trois pays,
The
pour renforcer
ASS aims to promote
l'autonomisation
a collective
militaire
defense
et les
strategy in which
ressources
each
de
country
défense
supports
fournies
the
par
others
la
in the
mise en
fight
place
against
des politiques
insurgents and
publiques
jihadist groups.
dans ces trois pays. Aussi, il s'agit de reconquérir le territoire né
Uh,
des terrorismes et des conflits et monter en puissance des armées de chaque pays,
and
tout
to
en
develop the
recherchant des
army in each
alternatives
country,
diplomatiques en tendant la main
free
à des
itself
pays
from
qui
dependence
respectent
on
la
external
souveraineté,
security powers,
qui ne sont pas des
such
pays qui
as the
imposent leurs choix
European Union
stratégiques au
or the
pays de
UN,
l'AES.
and to
Et aussi,
establish a
il
more
faut
autonomous response, which
compter sur
includes
le
the creation of
renforcement de
stronger armies
l'intégration régionale entre
within
les
each
différents
member
pays de
country.
l'AES, notamment sur la gestion des ressources naturelles. Vous savez que le peuple de l'AES regorge des ressources naturelles, comme nous disions.
You know, the countries of the
Aussi la
ASS
souveraineté
are
et
full of
l'objectif
natural
d'une
resources,
politique qui soulage la population sur les coupures énergétiques liées à l'énergie fossile. Aussi, Le Mali
And there's also fossil
a développé
fuels.
aussi une stratégie
Mali developed
minier
a
qui
mining
renforce la
strategy
position de l'État, contrairement au précédent président qui a
that
vraiment
relies
considéré que
on
le pays
the
n'était
strength
pas
of the state, contrary to former presidents.
Aussi, il faut la réduction de l'aide extérieure et la promotion de l'autosuffisance alimentaire
Also,
par
the
par
promotion of
des efforts
self-sufficiency
intensifs pour réduire la famine et la faim et
is important to
favoriser
reduce famine
la
and
réduction de
hunger
la pauvreté et
and fight poverty
faire renforcer l'économie locale de façon
and strengthen
générale,
local
que ce soit
economies.
au niveau national et dans les pays de l'AES, par aussi renforcer les institutions
And
économiques
strengthen
régionales par la mise en place des banques
institutions by
d'investissement et des
the
politiques monétaires qui vont
establishment
renforcer
of
la dynamique au
monetary
sein de
policy.
l'AES et aussi
The
soutenir
interpreter, sorry, but the sound, we're not getting a
qui
very
ont des doctrines
clear sound.
anti-impérialistes. Alors, les axes, pour résumer les axes
So
en
to
7 points,
summarize,
il s'agit aussi en premier plan la solidarité entre
first
les
of
pays de
all,
l'AES. C'est-à-dire
there's the
qu'un pays
solidarity
de l'AES
between
qui venait
the
à être
ASS
attaqué
countries.
ou les deux pays,
If one country is
les autres sont,
attacked, the
met leurs moyens
others
stratégiques, militaires, opérationnels et ressources en
will
commun
put their
pour
military and
réduire les
strategic
menaces, que ce
resources
soit au
at
Niger
their
et au
disposal,
Mali et
whether
au
it's
Burkina.
Niger,
Donc,
Mali,
ça
or Burkina
permet
Faso.
à ces trois États de mutualiser
This
leurs
allows
efforts
these
à
three
l'image de l'OTAN
countries
et des
to
autres
unite their
pays.
forces.
Aussi, l'autonomisation militaire. Il s'agit pour l'AIS de favoriser la libération des
The
dépendants vie de
alliance
puissances
seems to
extérieures comme
free itself from
l'enrichissement,
dependence on
chasse
external
extérieure
security
et
powers,
d'équité des pays à cause des conflits d'intérêts et des positionnements sous influence. Et aussi les renforcements des
and
dispositifs de
also
défense communs, comme je
joint
l'ai dit,
defense arrangements.
mener une
ASS
politique qui
members have
renforce
launched
comment contre
initiatives
les menaces
to
terroristes,
create joint brigades,
renforcer la formation et les renseignements
strengthen
entre
training
administrations
and
militaires. Ce sont
intelligence
des politiques que
information
mener
and
en Côte
coordinate
d'Ivoire
military
et qui ont eu
operations
un grand succès grâce au
similar to
partage
the
d'informations entre les
G5
trois frontières où
Sahel
c'était des
Joint
zones où il y
Force.
avait beaucoup de présence de terrorisme dans ces zones. Juste pour
There
illustrer,
was a lot of
vous voyez
terrorism in
la carte
in these
montre
areas. You see the
depuis
map
2012, le Mali est
since
sous le joug du
2012.
terrorisme et du grand banditisme. Et grâce
There's a lot of banditism and terrorism in these areas.
aux efforts du président et des autorités militaires et des trois pays de
And the
l'AIS,
three
des efforts qui
countries of
contribuent à
ASS
réduire les menaces
contributed
territoriales dans
to
l'ensemble des pays qui leur
decreasing their
étaient
presence
déjà un bastion
throughout the
impénétrable, sauf
territory, which used to be
protégé
impenetrable.
par les dauphins. Aujourd'hui, Kidal a été récupéré et
And it was recovered
l'autorité
today.
exerce tous ses pleins pouvoirs dans ces zones
And
grâce
the
à l'arrivée
authorities
des
now
nouveaux
exercise full
partenaires comme
power
la
in
Russie
these
et la Chine
areas.
qui ont aidé le Mali à renforcer
And
ses pouvoirs au-delà
China
de ses frontières
helped
et
Mali
exercer pleinement tous ces exercices de défense pour protéger et prévoir son droit d'exercer et qui aujourd'hui ses habitants sont
and
protégés et
today
font des activités
the inhabitants
dont
are
les enfants
protected.
ne partaient pas à l'école et grâce à cette
Before,
intervention
children were afraid
militaire
to
du
go off to
président,
school. And
l'ouverture
today,
des écoles
the
ont
situation
multiplié
has
pendant une décennie
changed,
d'années, cela n'a pas été possible
something
malheureusement.
that
Et aussi
hasn't
sur le plan économique,
been
il
the
faut
case
se
for the
rappeler
past decade.
que depuis 2012, le Mali avait
Since
perdu plus de
2012,
70% de son territoire.
Mali lost more than
Sans, vous voyez tout
70% of our
l'effort
territory to
énormément
terrorist
des
groups.
autorités
Today,
sur
it's
le
no longer
terrain,
the case.
les combats des drones, les
Few
véhicules, les tactiques,
countries
les blindés,
can
les avions
boast such a
logistiques
reversal of the
combinant
trend
sont
in 2 or 3
équipés et
years.
renforcés pour réduire toujours ces menaces. Vous voyez, j'ai l'image d'illustration des équipements militaires des FAMA
So you
grâce à l'appui
see,
de ces
this
partenaires
is military
stratégiques.
equipment with the strategic partners.
Et aussi, il faut compter aussi les renforcements de
Also,
l'intégration régionale entre les pays de l'AES.
we have to strengthen
Mener
the
échanges sur le
military
marché commun
alliances
qui vise aussi à
in
renforcer
the
l'intégration pour
area,
créer un marché
or
commun
the
et
general alliance. They're
faciliter la libre
seeking
circulation
to
moyenne des
create
services
a
et
free
des
trade
personnes au sein
and a
de
common
la région.
market in the
Ce qui
area,
permettra d'améliorer la compétitivité économique et
trying to
stimuler
also
la croissance.
improve the
Aussi des grands chantiers
competitive make the market competitive there. Oops, the sound is totally wiped out now. Sorry, interpreter. There's no sound at all now. I'm sorry, but
renforcer les Mali et les Niger pour renforcer aussi comme des routes, des lignes de transport logistique, des plateformes logistiques et pour améliorer aussi
the interpreter is really sorry, but the sound is just not adequate. We cannot hear in order to translate the comrade.
L'axe anti-impérialiste, c'est la gestion des ressources humaines.
There's also natural resource management. Sound is out. Sound has stopped. Can we ask the comrade to perhaps work on his microphone?
Comrade Hamidou,
Yeah, we
can you
can't hear him.
Comrade Hamidou, we cannot hear you properly. Your sound is fading.
What?
Your sound is fading. Yeah.
Okay.
Can you?
Okay.
That's
Je
a
vais
lot better.
renforcer.
That's so much better. Thank you. So maybe go back to the last 2 points from the sources you were talking about.
Renforcer. Je disais pour la gestion des ressources naturelles, des
For
politiques
management of natural resources,
d'exploitation minière et des matières
mining and primary resources in the ASS countries. As you know, ASS has many natural resources like gold, uranium, petroleum, and very rich agricultural lands. However, a large part of these resources are exploited by foreign companies, which limited advantages for local economies. So with the coming of current authorities, they aimed to increase the share of these benefits of this with policies that defend the interest of the state with a certain percentage that wasn't possible before. And energy sovereignty with the ASS has been achieved with the setting up of nuclear power, which is operational now, and in Burkina and in Mali, there is a project already underway. We have to note that the energy policy was reviewed, and now the state holds over 30% of the interest in these mining projects. And 5% or so it went from 235 billion to 767 billion dollars. That is a gain of 531 billion dollars, said the minister, and there was a creation of jobs as a result, and the creation of a state enterprise that allowed us to buy back mines that refused to go by the new mining code. And in 2024, Mali had 85,000 tons of lithium, and 35,000 were exported. These capacities of these mines was increased, and it was inaugurated by the president. And this is controlled by the state. This was not possible with the former regimes because the state at the present time imposes its choice and its orientation in favor of the interests of the countries of the SS. Also, the reduction of foreign aid and promotion of food self-sufficiency. Also, the establishment of agricultural development and industry locally. And in conclusion, the strengthening of regional economic institutions, the ASS abandoned CDAO and set up its own currency and created a confederal bank with capital of $500 billion.
Donner un bouffée d'oxygène à
And this really
nationale et
gave a
pour
fresh breath
et accompagner la vision
to the local economy and to all the countries of the SS. And in conclusion, the Pan-Africanist vision of the ASS countries continues to promote a united Africa that's independent and less dependent on former colonial powers. It's not to be linked indefinitely to foreign aid, but to live on our own efforts. And it's the peoples of ASS who promote free Africa in its choices and who chooses its own allies and lives through the work of its people, and that is confident in its youth and the development of all of Africa.
Okay.
Merci.
Wow, merci beaucoup, Comrade Hamidou.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Comrade Hamidou Jawara, for outlining the historic and ongoing anti-imperialist struggle in the Sahel, focusing on Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso's efforts to reclaim sovereignty by expelling former colonial military forces and forging new alliances with global partners like Russia and China. Comrade Hamidou also highlighted the collective security strategies of the Sahel states, which is very interesting. Their push for economic autonomy through regional integration, first. Second, natural resource control. And third would be a shift away from foreign aid dependency. Those are the important factors of delinking from imperialist control. Comrade Hamidou also emphasized the broader Pan-Africanist vision driving these efforts, aiming for a united, self-reliant South Africa that resists external domination and pursues endogenous development, which has agriculture, the establishment of communes or agriculture of the people. It is at the front and center of the Pan-Africanist vision in our day. Thank you so much. So we have reached the end of the presentation. So we will now get into the open forum and we will get to ask questions or we can, if there are points you want clarified from our presenters, then this is the time for that. You can type your questions on the chat, or you may raise your hand and I'll call on you, or just simply unmute your sound and comment or ask a question. You're very much welcome. So anyone may now ask a question to any or all of our speakers. I'm gonna go check the chat. Okay. So maybe comrades are still thinking of their questions or comments. I'm not seeing, Cody, is there a question in the Q&A box?
No questions yet.
No
We can remind,
questions.
if you want to
Okay.
raise your hand, you can also do that for the audience.
Yes. So as you think of your question, I would just like to share that as we are having this webinar, the U.S. military bases in Ecuador have sparked controversy over national sovereignty amid legal opposition and social unrest happening right now. President Daniel Noboa has called for a referendum to lift the constitutional ban on foreign bases, pushing forward plans before the vote. And this has drawn criticism for violating sovereignty and the constitution. So there's this political tension unfolds alongside a national strike that's being led by indigenous groups protesting other government policies and hiding deep divisions over Ecuador's direction and security strategy. So that's happening right now. And of course, you may have heard of the mobilization just last week here in the Philippines, 100,000 strong in Metro Manila alone, or even more, against imperialist sponsored bureaucrat capitalism. So the world is really burning. And we're happy that we have this opportunity to sit and listen to each other, learn from each other. Um, is there now a question or anyone who wants to communicate uh, with our speakers?
Yes, Sarah, if I may here, I know
Please go
you
ahead.
you're mentioning Ecuador, and in Ecuador, if you compare it to Colombia, in Colombia, of course, you had also there was this question about having a more U.S. military presence in Colombia, and the answer from Gustavo Petro, the president, was, well, will you allow me to have a Colombian base in the United States? So if it's a thing of matter of negotiation, we are both sovereign countries. So if I let you, why you don't let me? And of course that was the end of the conversation.
Yes, that's actually a very interesting and positive development from the end of Colombia. That's now very critical of the U.S., right? Invading the Caribbean through their U.S. naval warships, and he just mentioned President Gustavo Petro in the UNGA that the world can actually sue Trump for this war crime that they're about to commit if they pursue the war. Are there any more questions or points you want clarified? Okay, so I actually have a question for the three of you. In terms of, so we've heard about how the different organizations, so these were in the height of neoliberalism, especially in the Philippines and Puerto Rico. And of course, the Sahel region is a pleasant surprise for us, right? But we've learned that this has been a product of painstaking organizing and politicization, mass mobilization of our people. So at this point, what do you think, or how have your organizations, how have you been handling um, our desire to really strengthen our organizational capacity to, of course, kick out the US military bases again, and free ourselves from the, remnants and, the up and coming, plunderous policies of US imperialism. Any one of you may go ahead.
Teddy first.
Sure, sure. In the Philippines, the anti-bases movement has always been linked to the National Liberation Movement and the Progressive People's Movement. And during the time of President Duterte, this was in 2016 to 2022, uh, the attacks against the progressive movement and the national liberation really went overboard with the extrajudicial killings, the US designed counterinsurgency program. And organizationally, many of the social movements and, of course, the revolutionary movement uh, suffered from this kind of state terrorism unleashed by Duterte. And we are still in the stage of trying to recover many of the uh, bases, mass bases, and people's organizations. So there's that factor. And then the factor of China, uh, because there is uh, a threat from China with the conflict in the West Philippine Sea. And the US and the puppet state, the Marcos regime, is really using that to justify the return of US troops and bases. And for many Filipinos, their basic understanding is that China is the enemy now. And so they are a bit more accepting of increased US military presence. So that that anti-China sentiment, which is being really heightened and developed not only on social media but by US funded organizations here in the Philippines, is a big barrier to the revival of the anti-imperialist, anti-basist movement. Uh, so there is those twin challenges that we are facing now, but it's not an insurmountable challenge because eventually, if people start to understand that the conflict between China and the US is basically an inter-imperialist conflict being waged on our seas, then we hope that the people will understand that it is even more important that no foreign military bases should be in the Philippines because this has definitely escalated the conflict and is now dragging the Philippines into this conflict between China and the US. The Taiwan Strait is basically just across the northern part of the Philippines, and you have the West Philippine Sea. So the US is interested in heightening that. And with the missile systems of the US now in the Philippines, it will be most likely drag the Philippines into even more conflicts with its neighbors. So those are the challenges, and that, of course, we are facing that through increased education, increased uh, uh, organizing, and mobilization. Uh, Plus, there are domestic issues that we also have to face, like these corruption issues, governance issues. So it's a very, very busy time for us.
Yes, indeed. Thank you. Would you like to answer the question also, Comrade Kevin?
Sure. I will search in Spanish. So, Puerto Rico no ha
So
dejado de, sí,
Puerto
no ha
Rico
dejado de ser nunca una colonia de los Estados
has
Unidos
has always
de
been a
Norteamérica.
colony from the US, well, in the
En
recent
ese
times.
sentido,
So in that
127
sense,
años.
and
En
this
ese
is from
sentido, todas las
127 years
políticas
now.
de
So
los
in that
Estados
sense, all
Unidos
of the policies
afectan a Puerto Rico.
that are
Se dice
developed
que
in the
cuando en
US
Estados
affect Puerto
Unidos hay un
Rico. It is
catarro,
said that when there's a
en
cold or
Puerto
a
Rico hay una
flu
pulmonía.
in the US, we
Y en
have
ese sentido,
pulmonary
las
or
políticas de la administración actual
pneumonic challenges
tienen un
in
efecto sobre Puerto
Puerto
Rico
Rico. So
devastador.
all of the policies that
Por un
happen in
lado,
the US have
tanto las
devastating
políticas sobre
effects in Puerto
inmigrantes,
Rico. So the policies
comercio,
regarding migration,
las
commerce,
políticas anti-latinoamericanas,
policies
las
against
políticas
Latin American
expansionistas
people,
que hay
the
por un lado, pero
expansionist
por el otro lado,
policies,
gran parte de los seguidores del presidente
but
Trump
also the
no creen en esa
followers
expansión.
of Trump policies
Hay
don't
un
believe
juego,
in this
hay un juego
expansionist
de fuerzas
policies. So
también dentro
there's
de
this
Estados Unidos que nos afecta.
force game
Así que
inside the US that is
dentro de esa
affecting
guerra,
us.
Puerto
So
Rico
in this
cae
internal war,
entonces nuevamente
Puerto
presa
Rico
de
is
el juego
being
político
held hostage
interno
of
de
this
los Estados Unidos.
internal
¿Qué
political
podemos
game of the
hacer
US.
para quizás
So what we can do to strengthen our mobilization, to strengthen our struggle against the military bases is right now, well, the fact is that right now we are resisting. What we're doing is resisting the new militarization, the remilitarization that is trying to happen in Puerto Rico. And while we're resisting, this is something that is being led not only by the progressive sectors, but also sectors that are pro-independence for Puerto Rico. With the Vieques struggle, this struggle extended all the way through all the society. People who also believed that we should annex to the US, people that believe that we should be US citizens, all of them agreed that the Navy presence in Puerto Rico had to be kicked out. I think that we have been uh, there has been 22, 23 years from that victory, and we're still getting benefits from that struggle. And there are political sectors and social sectors that understand that military bases, bombs, guns, weapons have no place in Puerto Rico. And we need to add to the struggle the military presence of Puerto Rico. We need to oppose that. The fact that they're using Puerto Rico as a big uh, aircraft ship, and that they want to use our natural resources, our minerals, our lands. So what we're doing now is resisting the avalanche of policies from Trump presidency that are double taking on Puerto Rico.
Thank you so much, Comrade. Comrade Hamidou, there is actually a specific question for you, which you may answer alongside that first
Okay.
question because I think they are related. So, if you may allow me, having in mind that first question, what are the challenges and how do you face these current challenges? Plus, there's a question from one comrade. Is there any effort to tear or break down the cooperation in Sahel region by imperialist power, so similar to, internal contradictions? Or what are the threats identified for the Sahel region?
Oui, merci. Euh, je suis très ravi de recevoir ces questions. Les
Yes, thank you.
défis,
I'm very
les
happy
efforts.
to hear
Comme
those
je l'ai rappelé,
questions.
notre président de la République l'avait rappelé, que notre
As
pays
our
est soucieux
president
de
reminded
raffermir
us,
ses relations avec tous
the
les pays
country
du Mali
has to
et de
reinforce its
participer
relationship
activement
with all
désormais
the
à la
countries
vie
in
de
the
la nation
world,
du Mali et
those
à
countries
l'équité
that
de
want to
l'ensemble des
protect
pays de
their
l'AES.
territories. It
Cependant,
happens with
il est
Mali.
important que nos
However,
partenaires comprennent
it's
désormais
important
que les
that
relations avec
our
les pays de
partners
l'AES, notamment
understand
du Mali,
that
doivent
the
désormais
countries in
être
our region,
fondées sur les trois
especially
principes
Mali, should
définis
base
par le
themselves on
président.
three principles
Je
defined by
répète
the
déjà.
president:
Le respect de la souveraineté du
respect
Mali,
of
qui est non
Mali's
négociable.
sovereignty, which is
Le
non-negotiable.
respect des choix stratégiques
Also,
opérés par
the
le Mali,
respect of
la
the
défense des intérêts
Mali
du peuple
population
malien
choices and the defense
dans
of
les prises de
the
décision.
people's
Une
interests.
fois que ces trois principes sont
Once
respectés
these three
par les
principles
États,
are respected
quelle que
by
soit,
other states,
le Mali peut coopérer dignement
then
dans
Mali
une
can
dynamique
cooperate
gagnant-gagnant
in a dignified
et
win-win
travaillera
dynamic.
avec ces pays qui
And
accepteront ces trois principes.
then we can work
Maintenant,
and cooperate
vous savez
based
que
on
nous
those
sommes
three
avec
principles.
les frontières, le soutien des terrorismes, le soutien des narcotrafiquants.
As we know,
Il y a beaucoup de dangers.
there are powers that are supported by drug traffickers, by terrorists, and we also see the dangers that come from the ongoing conflicts like that happening in Ukraine, all this poses challenges to us, and we have to be very aware of the quote unquote support intentions when we see there are hidden intentions behind. We know that most of the times terrorism has more resources than we do. Most of the times, drug traffickers and terrorists, they have more arms, they have more money, they have more drones. This is something that is happening now that 5 years ago wasn't possible. So they have better equipment compared to our military equipment. So we have to fight against bigger powers. I think that is the biggest challenge that we have to face, the inequality of resources. It's important to have our AES, our military teams, strong enough, and we are open to sincere proposals of support as long as they are sincere and based on these three principles I mentioned. As our presidents have reminded us, we have won these wars and Africa will wake up. That is a promise that has been made to our younger generations.
Thank you so much, Comrade Hamidou. It's almost 15 minutes to 10, and we're about to wind up. But before we do, before we
Antes
close,
de,
may I ask Cody to show us an important activity that we are holding next month. There will be an International People's Tribunal for Palestine there. So there's the introduction to the Palestinian struggle against U.S. Zionist occupation. Sunday, October 12th, 4 p.m. Central Europe. So this is in preparation for the tribunal. So we're also asking different organizations from the Sahel region, from the Caribbean, especially Puerto Rico and Latin America, to please support this particular campaign. There's a statement being circulated, and we need your endorsement for the International People's Tribunal. We will, of course, get in touch with you. Of course, if you have any more questions or if you want to get in touch with our speakers, please do so through ILPS or Bayan. So it's my task to synthesize this very rich discussion from our three very capable speakers. We've heard three interventions delivered by activists with unassailable and deeply inspiring records of serving the people. And they have revealed how the crisis of imperialism fuels powerful mass movements and revolutionary struggles against US and Western military dominance in the Philippines, Puerto Rico, and the Sahel, highlighting diverse yet intersecting strategies of resistance. And central to these struggles is the land question, an agrarian and national question, which, as our speakers have demonstrated, are repeatedly hijacked by US imperialism's relentless pursuit of profit and global wars, where lands are occupied and devastated. Food production is undermined. Peasants are abused, demonized, violated. And yet, here we stand united as an international movement against US military bases and for land, with one truth made clear by our shared histories, that the most oppressed class is also a fighting class. And that's been exemplified by peasants and farm workers in colonies and semi colonies, and powerfully embodied in the revolutionary struggle of Palestinians, especially visible in the Great Al Aqsa flood uprising 3 years ago to the present. So, in the Philippines, decades of militant popular protests, there's also legal battles, broad coalitions, as shared by Teddy, culminated in the historic ouster of the US military bases in 1991. Though neocolonial control persists, um, and of course, this demands continued mass mobilization. Meanwhile, Puerto Rico's unique struggle combined grassroots civil disobedience with relentless lobbying to expel US naval forces despite deep environmental and social ravaging. And there was really super active mass mobilization among the people. And then Sahelian states like Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso are advancing military autonomy, regional economic integration, and diplomatic realignments away from former colonial powers under a pan-Africanist vision, prioritizing sovereignty and endogenous development. So these shared strategies across movement include mass mobilizations rooted in national liberation, broad alliances, and I think more importantly, or most important of all, linking democratic reform with anti-imperialist goals and steadfast rejection of internal collaborators who perpetuate imperial or imperialist domination. So the uniqueness of each struggle reflects its context. Philippines as a U.S. economy with entrenched U.S. bases. You have Puerto Rico burdened by militarization and ecological harm, and the Sahel as a geopolitical battleground led by military regimes asserting African unity. So together, these struggles proclaim the warning that this is the time of monsters. It's a moment marked by imperialist atrocities and fascism, but also a time of immense sacrifice and unparalleled determination to defeat imperialism and build a socialist future. And these cases prove that people have dared to struggle and dared to win. The protracted war for national liberation and socialism in the Philippines, Puerto Rico, in the Sahel, teaches us that time is on our side. The longer our struggle endures, the stronger we become in this asymmetrical war against US imperialism. So to our brothers and sisters in Palestine whose farms are starved, lands grabbed, and homes bombed, yet whose past and future are defined by resistance and a will to triumph, our struggle for land and liberation against US imperialism is inseparable from the fight for a free Palestine. And thank you so much from to our comrades Teddy, Kevin, and Hamidou for your tireless work and for deepening our understanding of the necessity to fight for sovereignty, dignity, land, and life against US military bases and imperialism. Your interventions inspire us to intensify our international solidarity and renew our commitment to our quest for national liberation and justice. Thank you so much. Thank you all for coming. And on behalf of the ILPS Commissions 1 and 6, this is Sara Raimundo of Commission 1 and Bayan. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Merci.